Hi, I'm Mark. Welcome back to Foothill Paint Fabrication. Well, we're right back on Project Ruby today, and she's actually in the shop with me. First time ever. This car's never been in this shop. It really hasn't been in the shop in a long time. Been stored outdoors for 30 years. So I'm really happy and excited to get her inside the shop with me. I really was hoping when she came into the shop for the first time, she'd be stripped all the way down to bare steel, but that's not the case. We are going to have to go ahead and change out this quarter panel. Now, in the last video you guys saw, we ground off all this body filler and found all the mangled sheet metal underneath it. Really, the smart thing for me to do is to change out the quarter panel before it goes to, the car goes to get dipped. I don't want to send it with this janky quarter panel on here and then have to rework it later after it's dipped. Now, I do have a donor car, and it does have a good quarter panel on it. Now, I could buy a new quarter panel. They do make repops with the sale panel on it. They're about, I think, about $850 plus shipping, so it'll probably be out $1,000 at least to get it to me. But under kind of a time constraint here because the appointment is set to get this car to Oregon to the guy that's going to dip the car, and I'm starting to run out of time. I was ahead of schedule, but now this kind of threw a monkey wrench in that, and so I don't want to push it. So I went ahead and cut the quarter panel off the donor car. It fought back a little bit, got me right here pretty good, but I got it off there and spent a couple of days cutting all the external sheet metal, all the bracing and everything up. I just hacked it all right off there. I mean, I did old school like we used to do back in the day. You go to the junkyard, they just torch a whole big chunk off, and then you have to whittle away at what you want to put on the car you're working on. So let's just jump in here. We're going to take a look at the quarter panel. We're going to take the donor one, and then we're going to take a look at this one up close, and we're going to kind of talk about the game plan to get the new quarter panel on Ruby so she's ready to go and we can get this thing dipped. So let's jump in here and take a look at it. Okay, here is the quarter panel off the donor car, and it's in really good shape. There's a couple little, there's like an oil can right here, and I think there's a little dent there and there. Not very bad. They just have body filler over the top, no slide hammer work. So before this goes on Ruby, we're going to go ahead and grind all that off and try to hammer that out a lot better and get the sheet metal pretty nice, because once it's on the car, it'll be so much harder. So if we got it here on some sawhorses, it's a lot easier to work on. So we'll be working on that. But I got this whittled down, and I'll go and show you guys a few pics of the process. So what I did was, like I said, I just hacked it off. And then what I did was I went through methodically, knowing that I wanted to save the sheet metal, not the bracing. So I was very careful to try to work from the backside. It did take longer to try to preserve as much as the skin as possible, but it was worth it. And actually, this panel here, this quarter panel, is in really good shape. So I'm really happy that I had this. And like I said, that other car has really no value to me, so it was worth it to use the parts off of it. It may not be the last part that comes off that car either. So back here in the back, we've got, it's all removed down to right where the seam is, and I cut it apart right where all the seams are. Now, it takes a lot more work to do it that way, but there will be no welding of seams out anywhere where you can see it. So the hardest part on most of this is getting through. They used to braze these things together. They'd spot weld them, and then some spots they would braze and then grind it. So that brazing is tough to work with. And then, of course, the leading up here. This is leaded in fairly heavy. I mean, these things were spot welded together, really rough, and then you guys will see it when I unlead the Ruby on her sail panel. And then, this kind of spot welds this on here, and then they just cover the whole thing. That was their body filler back then. And then they would file it down. They did excellent work, beautiful work, but it is kind of difficult to get out of there, but I'll show you guys how to do it. And then the drip edge right here, this is the lip off the drip edge. That's going to be challenging to get that. It was easier to get it off on this one because all I had to do was remove everything around it, but it's looking good. Now this quarter panel is slightly different than Ruby. Now Ruby is what's called a sport coupe or sedan. Now this is off a hardtop. Now the hardtop has the window with no post, and it comes out into the door jamb a little bit. You guys know what they look like. So there's a hole right here, where on Ruby there is no hole because there's a post coming up. There's just a little jog in it. So what we'll do, we'll cut the parts off of Ruby, and then I'll weld that on there and grind it smooth. You'll never know it. But I did take all the inner bracing out except for the striker post. That one's spot welded in, and so it's easier for me to remove it off of Ruby and then just put this right back in its place, spot weld that. It spot welds to the inner structure where the window regulator goes. But it's all in great shape. I don't know how much you guys can see. We'll flip it over later so you guys can look up underneath it. But some rusting down in the bottom, you know, quarter panel there, but not super bad, not worth worrying about. I did pressure wash it off and wire wheel it, so I think it's sound. So it's looking good. It'll be as good as that, the passenger side, that's for sure. So I think I got a nice piece of sheet metal here. I think it's going to work out great. The body lines look great. I'm really happy that I had it, but you know, like I said, there are repops available, and for what I've seen, they look pretty nice. So let's move over to Ruby and take a look at that quarter panel. All right, so here is the damage. I don't know if this was multiple wrecks or just a single wreck, but it looks like it started right here with the bumper, and it went all the way pretty much down the center, all the way almost to the door. I think it stopped just before the door, and it kind of tacoed this thing in pretty good because the body filler goes all the way up into the body lines. And of course, you guys seen the massive dents right there and right over here where they just kind of yanked it out. Now they drilled a big hole. I can put my index finger in that hole. They drilled a big hole, probably put a bolt and a plate or something on there and just pulled as hard as they could to yank that back out. Now the problem is they did not weld the hole shut, and you can see all that rust. When you penetrate sheet metal, you need to weld the hole shut, because what will happen is, in this case, water got back there and it attacked the body filler from the backside. And that's a real problem, guys. Unless you can seal that up really well, if you drill holes, weld those holes shut if you can. Now, the old days, you just slide hammer it and you just spooge the body filler in there, and it would, you know, come through with a little goober on the other side, and that kind of sealed it up. But when you're down at the bottom of a rocker like that, it's going to get water, and it could rust from the back side, so keep that in mind. Now, this quarter panel is really big, and one of the reasons I want to put a whole new quarter panel on here is because this body line along here, this quarter panel is over 7.5 feet long, guys. And for me to work this sheet metal and get all this right and then get that body line corrected, it's way easier in time and money and just my effort to go ahead and put a whole new quarter panel on. That's very, very straight. When I was pressure washing this one and I had it wet, I looked down at it, I saw a little tiny wave in it, but the body lines are perfect, just a little sheet metal wave. So I think we can fix that no problem. But this one, it is so beat up, it's just better to go ahead and cut it off. Now, the one little slight difference I was talking about on this is right here. And so you can see the post right here, and on that hard top, it has that notch right there. Well, this one doesn't have that notch. We're going to section out this piece and cut it to fit, weld it on the other one, and easy peasy, that's done. Everything else matches exactly. So what we're going to do is, I'm going to do it with a plasma cutter. I'm going to cut huge chunks out of this thing to where it's safe to do it, where I won't hit any inner bracing, and then that'll get me close to the spot weld seam so I can start drilling out those spot welds, and it's just easier for me to split that seam and get it off. I don't care about this sheet metal on this quarter panel. I just want it out of my way so I can get to the parts to release it, to get down to the inner fender well, the rockers, everywhere there it's spot welded on. I want to be able to get to that easily. But before we can start doing that, we need to work on this body cart. Now this body cart, we only set this car on here to roll it around, get in a trailer, get it off the trailer, you know, so they can lift it into the tank and be acid dipped. But to cut a quarter panel off, it needs more support. It's only held by that body mount back there and one up here. Now that means the whole back body part, the whole quarter panel is holding this thing together. If I start cutting on this thing, it could jump on me and sag, and then I got to figure out where it belongs. So I got to build some bracing off of this cart to the back and attach to that other back body bolt. Now, it may seem extreme to do that, but I have seen it happen. I was standing in a shop. The car was sitting on jack stands on one side, on the tires on the other, and the guy's just cutting away, and the whole thing jumped. Now, it turns out that car had been in an accident before, and the frame had a little tweak to it, and the body was actually holding everything straight, and it turned into a nightmare for those guys to try to get the new panels back on after everything had jumped. So I don't want to be that guy. So we're going to go ahead and work on some sort of bracing back farther, and even if I have to put a jack stand underneath there and get all the weight, you know, distributed properly, that's what we're going to go ahead and do. So let's get to work on that right now. Okay, I've got some 2x2 by 12 gauge perforated posts. I've got a clamp down at the front there on the cart. I've got a clamp down right here, both of them. And then I've got a piece of, I think that's 1.5 inches, and it's bolted to the body, right at the body bolt, body mount, I mean. And then all I have to do is drill a hole. Now I've taken a floor jack and I've preloaded this to make, account for the sag in this square tubing, because it is kind of hanging out here. And also because the body could be sagging a little bit because it's not sitting on a body bolt back here. So I preloaded that. The wheels aren't off the ground, but I've got a fair amount of weight on it. And all I have to do is drill a hole through that piece of 1.5 inches right there, all the way through. Take that bolt, put it in there, and squeeze that tight, release the jack, and we'll watch how much it sags. And then what I'll do is I'll take some measurements to figure out where everything's at right now. And then later, once we get all the quarter panel off, we'll take a measurement again to make sure it hasn't moved dramatically. I mean, it's not rocket science here, guys, but you don't want to be you know, fighting something and then trying to figure out why body panels won't line up when ultimately the whole body has moved, or the you know, the structure underneath. So let me get that drilled, get a bolt in there, and then we'll take a look at it. Okay guys, we got the bolt in there and tight. I lowered the jack and I didn't see it really sag at all, or maybe just a tiny bit. So I think we're good right there. That's going to help support us. Now I do need to get in and out of the trunk. I don't weigh a lot, but if I feel like it's bouncing, you know, and flexing a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and cut a block to fit underneath there, the exact height, you know, and just maybe raise it up a little bit and just put a little bit of weight on the block so it's nice and secure, just for extra caution, just to make sure nothing moves. But we are pretty good right there. I'm pretty happy the way that went. Now we're going to have to backtrack here a little bit. You know, we took the door off, everything, but I have to put the door back on. And the reason I have to put the door back on is because I have to align it up with the bottom and right here. So I want to make sure that door is positioned perfectly. Now remember, all the damage is, most of the damage is back here. So I know this is sweet right here. That's pristine. So I'm going to adjust that door so my door gap right here is perfect, and along the bottom, and of course the top too. And I'm going to get that door tightened down right where it belongs. Now we'll just swing that door out of the way while we're working, but I cannot put that door on later after I've cut this off. I won't know where it goes. I can't just line it up off the bottom here. I still have in and out to adjust, and I want to make sure that that new quarter panel is put in just the right spot before we tack it into place. So that door needs to go back on. It's pretty easy to swing out of the way. It shouldn't be a problem. Okay, I went ahead and wrote down the dimensions with a Sharpie on the door, what the gaps are at these points. And I got it down here on the right here on the door jamb as well. And notice those numbers. I used the caliper. I didn't hand pick those spots. I just randomly put a line. I measured, and they're all three exactly the same dimension using a caliper. So that's pretty impressive. Not bad fitting it there. So we're going to go ahead and use a plasma cutter, and we're going to cut way back from where we are. And we're going to do, I like to do little chunks at a time. So we're going to take this piece off right here so I can get to the seams and drill out the spot welds, and just remove a small piece instead of trying to wrestle this whole thing. You know, is the spot weld loose or whatever, I can just slice it back and we'll get that chunk out of the way, and then I can always trim back a little bit closer and then start cutting spot welds. Now we do need to split this right here. But last night I went ahead and ordered this fill panel right here, because you guys remember it is just done right here. I mean, it's completely rusted out. And I was thinking yesterday, I was floating in the pool and I was thinking, you know what? While I'm doing this quarter panel, let me see if I can get that panel in quick enough. And instead of just leaving it kind of screwed together here while it gets dipped, I can go ahead and get the whole thing replaced right now and actually save me some labor down the road. So that's what we're going to try to do. Hopefully it should be here by the end of the week. So about 4 days away, hopefully that panel will be in, and by that time we'll have all this removed. I may have to wait a little bit. We'll have all this removed and we can do the fitment of both pieces kind of at the same time and get it really sweet. So cross your fingers, hopefully they ship it out today and it'll be here in a few days. So let me get the plasma cutter out, and you can see I've got some chalk lines on here. Just give me some reference. I don't want to guess, and I don't want to have the plasma torch reach in there and cut a brace or something I don't want cut. So let me back the camera away and we'll lop this piece off. Kind of scary doing this sometimes, even though I've done it before, but it needs to be done, and we got to get it done. I don't like cutting through body filler here. I'm gonna have to steer around it. Whew. Smelly. Come on. All right, there we go. Looking good. I'm going to trim it back a little bit more so I can see now what I'm not going to hit, and we'll get a little bit closer to the spot welds. Okay, we got a big chunk out of ruby, and I don't know if you guys were paying attention, but as I made these cuts here, I was looking for this piece to move or to push together, or something to happen. Nothing happened. When I made the cut, nothing moved. When I made the slice across here and I left some parts up on top, I was looking for it to buckle, something to move. Nothing moved. So I think we're really good. I lucked out. My smallest jack stand at the lowest point is actually the height to go underneath that 2x2 right there. I actually lifted up with just my body and lifted up just a little bit and then slid that under and put it right back on there. So I think we're good as far as the car not moving when we finish cutting the rest of this quarter panel off. Now there is a lot of structure back here. So the inner fender well is the strength, and there's some bracing that goes up inside there. So, I think we're going to be fine. There shouldn't be a problem. The skin does add some strength, but most of the bracing is going to stay, or all the bracing is going to stay, and we're just replacing the skin. So I think we're going to work out just fine. Okay, I took a wire wheel and went after it pretty good. So you can see these real easy. You can feel them. They're big old divots right along here. So those are going to be fairly easy to find. And remember, this piece of sheet metal I don't care about. I care about what's behind it. So we can drill those out and just kind of pry this away, then clean up that flange, and we're good to go. Did the same thing around here. Got in there with just a little roll lock. Got all that cleaned up. I can see some spot welds right here. You got to find them, and that's the best way, because it always leaves a little divot when they, spot weld that. So it helps you find them. Up here, same thing. These are a little bit harder to see, but I can feel them. So we're going to have to drill those out, use the spot weld cutter on them. I did run into some leading right here. They leaded this right here. So let me grab the torch, and we're going to warm that up and wipe it out with a rag. I don't want to go grinding on that. You don't want to be throwing lead into the air, breathing it, getting it on your clothes, tracking it in the house. So we're just going to warm this up with a propane torch. and I'll show you, you just wipe it right out of there with a rag. So let me grab that and we'll take care of it real quick. Okay, we're just going to use a simple propane torch. I'm just going to warm this up. I got gloves on and I've got a fan blowing any fumes away. So and it doesn't take a tremendous amount of heat to get this out of here. I've got an old t-shirt. So we're going to warm it slowly. We're not going to try to just melt it all out at once, because we don't want to get the sheet metal any hotter than we have to. So you'll see it start to sag. See it starting to silver. It's getting brighter. So you see it just wanting to run right now. So we're going to get that a little bit warmer. Let it start to sag. It's starting to drip out. Pretty thick right there. And we're just going to take a rag and wipe it just like that. So we can wipe the bulk of it out. And I've got gloves on, you know, I mean, you don't want this stuff to splash up. Make sure there's none up here, which there is. It doesn't take a tremendous amount of heat to get this lead to come out. So you can see we got it all the way up here. So see, it's bleeding out of that seam. So once we get it clear, then we have a better idea. All this sheet metal's coming off, so it doesn't really matter. But we still have to find those spot welds. That solder or that leading is not holding this together structural wise. It's more of like a body filler. But it will impede you from getting your spot welds cut and apart. I gotta drip that out right there. And we're starting to look good. So we got a little puddle back in here. See if I can get that out. It doesn't matter, I can clean that up later. Gravity's actually helping me here a little bit, running it out. And that looks pretty good. So I'm going to let this lead cool, and I'm going to sweep it up and get rid of it right now. I don't want it to stick to the bottom of my boot, track it inside the house. You guys know how dangerous lead can be for children, so be careful with it. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's see if we can find those spot welds in there. That's a little thick right there. It's kind of surprising. The other car did not have any leading right here at all. Had some brazing where they brazed it together, but no leading. All right, we're going to call that good right there. Let's let that cool. Okay, here's the basic tools I use to get these spot welds off. So the first foremost is a spot weld cutter. You can get these at Harbor Freight. You can get them online, Amazon. They're very inexpensive. And all it is like a mini hole saw, but the pin right here is not a drill bit, is actually a spring-loaded that goes back inside there. And I'll show you how it works in a second. Drill bits, and what I do is use this small drill bit to drill like a little indentation in the center of the spot weld, so this little pin on this can not wobble out, and kind of keeps it locked in right there. You can also drill all the way through with a small drill bit and put that in there, and that works as well, and I may do that on this one. Hammer and an old wood chisel. They actually make a seam splitter, that you can buy, but I mean, this old wood chisel, this was my dad's, and it works pretty good. It doesn't have to be super sharp. In fact, if it's not super sharp, it's probably a little bit better. That way you don't end up drifting and cutting the wrong sheet metal with it, but it works. I've been using it for years. And then I use 2 different drills. That way I don't have to switch back and forth, not a necessity. And then just a pair of pliers that I can get a lot of leverage with. Now these are the ones my son bought me, and the plier jaws actually close perfectly parallel to each other, and allows me to grab that sheet metal across a large area. And you'll see me, I'll grab it, and then I'll kind of can opener and twist it, and it slowly rolls that sheet metal away from those spot welds, and it just kind of tears it away, and then you're pretty much done. So let's find a couple spot welds you guys can see really well, and we'll get them drilled out and start removing them. So here's spot weld, there's spot weld, there's a spot weld. So I'm going to find the center of it, and I'm going to drill a divot just like that, so that little pin has something to ride in. It's a fine line from drilling as deep as you can and not going through. Now these spot weld cutters, they do not like to be overheated, so you want to watch your speed, get good pressure. The chips will carry away the heat, but if you just crank this thing up wide open and just bury it in there, you're going to turn the thing blue. The teeth are going to, get dull, and you'll have to, get a new one. Now these are reversible. You can tell there's teeth on this side. I've already pretty much worn that one out, so you just unthread it, turn it around, and thread it right back on. Like I said, they're not very expensive. They usually come in a 2-pack. I think I've got the other one around here, unless I broke that one, so I may have to get a new one if this one doesn't hold up. So what we're going to do is we're just going to put it down in that little divot we just drilled right there. Put good pressure, try to get nice and even so you cut a nice even spot. And then you just check every once in a while. You try to have to figure out about how thick the sheet metal is and how deep you are, really, and that's it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get these right here, and then we'll get a chisel in there and see if we can pop that out. So what I like to do is do 2 or 3 of them, depending on the spacing, and then set the drill down, let that cutter cool, and then in the meantime, I'll start doing a little bit of chisel work on them, get some pliers in there. And the whole idea is we want to weaken that so we can pull that sheet metal away. That spot weld is about that big. The cutter should just cut just around it if you did it right. And then if you're lucky, you can just bend it away just like that. Now see, did you hear that one pop right there? So that one was just about perfect. This one's hanging on a little bit. And getting it started is the hard part. So luckily, I got that one loose right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the chisel in there, and I'm going to move that away from the sheet metal on the back so I can actually cut that in 2, and then we can work from here down. And then I can start doing like the can opener thing like I was telling you guys about. So I'm going to go ahead and get this to move apart here a little bit. Okay, so we need a starting point to start peeling this away instead of just trying to remove this all in one gigantic piece. It doesn't matter. You want to just work in small segments. So I'm going to take a cutoff wheel, and since I've got that pried away, I can take the cutoff wheel and slice that right there, and then we can start working our way down. So one of the good tricks is when you see it starting to turn blue, you know that you're almost through the sheet metal, and then you can just kind of help it along with the chisel. Because you want to be careful not to cut into that the backing behind, because that's what we want to save. We want to get this out of our way. So let's see if I got that enough to break it away. Yep, there we go. Just like that. So that gets us a good start, and you can see, let me zoom you in close here. Okay, you can see right here with this spot weld is actually tearing away, which is a good thing. And so what I'll do is I'll just take these pliers and I'll grab across there, and I'm just going to twist it like that, and I can see where it's tearing right there. So I'll try to grab it a little tighter, and we'll just kind of use the leverage until it breaks just like that. Now I know there's another spot weld right there, so basically you just kind of move this up out of your way again and then find the next one. So there's one right there. I can feel one right here. So let me get these drilled real quick, and then I'll bring you back. We'll see if we can't just roll this thing down like an old sardine can and roll it all the way down. Then we can start working on the one down at the bottom of the rocker right here. Okay, I've been at this about 10 minutes. Got through several of them there. So this one's tearing out, but you can see the spot weld it leaves behind. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take these pliers, and like I said, remember they close down parallel to each other, and I'm just going to go through and pinch the sheet metal straight again because we, kind of torqued it a little bit. And the spot weld leaves divots. Now we want this as flat as we can make it, or as smooth as we can make it, not necessarily flat. So when we come back, we got to clean this flange up. And to do that, we have to take a grinder and grind all these little divots off right here. So there's a little sheet metal left behind. We got a little bit of stuff there. There's a little, one of the spot welds, another one. So I'm going to get a grinder. I'm going to grind that smooth, and this part will be ready to go. And that's basically it, guys. I'm going to have to walk my way all the way around. I have to do the rocker all the way across here. I'm just going to have to lay down and on the creeper and get after it. So I'm not going to film any of that. But let me get this ground up, and I'll bring you back. We'll take a look at the flange, and this will be the mating surface for the new skin to go onto at this spot. Okay, got it all cleaned up real nice. Hit it with a grinder on every one of those little buttons that was sticking out from the old sheet metal. Hit it with a flapper disc with some 60 grit on it, just kind of cleaned it up. Took those pliers and went through and pinched that and kind of smoothed it out. It's got a little bit of a curve, so I just went in and slowly just, carefully just pinched it down till it's nice and smooth and straight. When you guys are hammering with a chisel and doing that other stuff, try not to push the sheet metal around too much, drive it this way or that way. And if you do move it, try to move it right back to where it belongs, because later we have to hang that quarter panel on here where we have to pinch this back together. So, there could be stuff that's moved a little bit, especially if there's been a collision. So you can look at the other side and figure out how this side's supposed to look and bend it back to where it belongs. I think we may have that issue here, because I think when that was pushed in, that bottom piece right there where the pinch weld is was pushed over. I don't think they pulled it back to where it belongs, but we'll check the other side, then come back to this side and bend it where it belongs before we try to hang that quarter panel on there. Okay guys, this video is getting way too long, so we're going to cut it off right here. We'll pick it up on the next one, get the rest of it, just chunk the rest of that off there and get all the spot welds cut. So thanks for joining me here at Foothill Paint and Fabrication. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't already. Mash that bell and drop me a comment. I'd love to hear from you. We'll see you on the next one.